We have a segment here that we simply call
Look at this photograph.
where I show you photographs throughout your career. I am very interested to hear, like, maybe what went into some of these, including this one, which I feel like is a pretty prominent photo that a lot of people have seen over the years. It is yourself, Scott Norton, Rick Rude, Buff Bagwell, Nash, Hogan, Conan, and Hall. This was all over the magazines back in the day. Like, I remember this was like, if you needed an NWO reference shot in a wrestling magazine, that's the one that was used. Oh, does that jog any memories for you?
I mean, memories in general, sure. That was clearly almost immediately after the famous Montreal screw drop, because you saw Ric Flair Rick Rude in the ring with us in his suit and tie. So it might have been the same night. Not sure. Could have been Rude's first night, and it was probably a photographer, perhaps in WCW, but likely outside of the company, said, "Hey, let's get you all in the ring together, Alan." Just a spontaneous moment.
I have often said I learned more about North Korea from the NWO than I did public school. Like Scott Norton talking about it, and then like you providing the information about the collision in Korea. Like I learned more from wrestling about North Korea than public school, and I think that speaks volumes.
Well, it speaks volumes about the public school system,
Yes.
number one. But it's a hermit country. I mean, the reason the average American doesn't know anything about North Korea, other than what they hear in the news, which is limited, is because nobody gets to get in and out. You don't see anything. You don't get a snapshot into what the world is like from that perspective, which is why going to North Korea, I probably will go to my grave saying this, was one of the most fascinating aspects of my career, because I literally stepped foot into a world that I didn't know existed, that I was unable to comprehend before I got there, and I haven't seen anything like it since. It was an amazing experience.
Here's one that I love. You getting your head shaved, Eric Bischoff. I understand this was for a good cause.
Oh, yeah. That was for ad-free shows, and we raised a bunch of money for St. Jude. I think we raised like $15,000.
That's fantastic.
But you notice, my ego is such that I had to grow a beard out if I was going to be if my head was going to be shaved, because I had people had to know there was still some testosterone flowing through my veins.
This is something that you've done a few times, though, like gotten your head shaved on TV. Mick Foley, I know, back in WCW. I mean,
Ric Flair did it.
Yeah, you've always been willing to go that extra mile for the sake of entertainment, and in this case, a good cause.
Well, part of it was that. Part of it was self-serving. When Ric Flair popped my maiden bald cherry, it was because I was so tired of dyeing my hair. My hair back then, it's different now, and I'm telling you the truth. My hair was really thick and heavy and coarse, and it grew about 1/4 of an inch a week.
Yes.
And my hair back in the late 90s is the same color it is now, almost. It's a little more white now than it was silver then, but it was like platinum. And I'd have to dye my hair every week. And there was a couple times when I'd use that cheap stuff, because my hair was long. And what it would do is it would kind of part itself in the middle. And then I had this silver streak going down the top of my head. I looked like Pepe Le Pew, the cartoon skunk.
From where your roots are going out. I love it.
I got tired of painting it. So I said, let's come up with an angle where I could shave my head. And that's the reason I did it the first time. And I ended up dyeing my hair again when I went back to WWE, because that's what Stephanie wanted. But I was like, oh, free at last, free at last. I don't have to dye my hair anymore. Free at last.
Fantastic. Here's a beautiful one. Look at this. Look at these two guys. I love this era of back and forth. This was the authority figure, I think, like at some of its peak, because we had a guy like Steve Austin who was impossibly over, and a guy like you who had done all that you had done, and we knew there was real conflict there in the past.
It was such a fun time for me. in terms of performing in a storyline, without question, working with Steve Austin during that whole co-GM run and leading up to a match at No Way Out, that was the absolute most fun I've ever had on a week-to-week basis in the wrestling industry, because you never knew what was going to happen. You know, we had a general idea because people would give us scripts, but see, Steve Austin at the time was one of the few people that would go, "Oh, thanks for the script. All right, here's what we're going to do." And it was all improv. And Steve Austin, the guys who were best at improv, for me, I should say, were number one, Steve Austin, right there with him, Mick Foley. These were guys you could get in the ring with no script, have a general idea of what you should accomplish because you know where you're going in the next big match or pay-per-view or whatever the case may be. And you could just go out there and wing it, and it would be gold. You were spinning gold out there, and you had no idea what you were going to say when you got into the ring. You're just feeding off each other, which is, you know, that's real acting. You know, when you're reacting to something you didn't expect and you're doing it in a controlled manner that advances your character or story, that's real acting. I'm not an actor. I've never taken acting lessons, but I know some people that have. And when you have somebody like Steve Austin or Mick Foley, where you could just go out there and, you know, gunsling it and still tell a great story, is the most rewarding experience.
Was there any point where you were concerned you were going to get run over by an ATV?
Nah, no fear. Look, you know, there was a great backstory between Steve and I. Many years of backstory. Eric Bischoff fired him by FedEx because he was injured. You know, that's just pretty fucking evil. It's not really the story,
Yes,
but it's the story that was out there. And, you know, the audience knew about that. And, you know, they wanted Steve to come back so badly to WWE. And that's a very valuable kind of asset to have when the fans desperately want to see somebody back. It's pretty hard to screw it up. So now you take somebody like Steve, who the fans desperately wanted to see come back. Now you're slamming him into a story with a guy who screwed him over and treated him badly and unfairly, but now is in power. How could you have a more perfect setup than that?
yes.
And then, like I say, Steve was at the top of his game. He was so over. He was so good and so much fun to work with. That's why it was the most fun thing I've ever done.
Look at this. WCW Hardcore Champion Eric Bischoff with the hair that you mentioned, mind you.
Yeah, and did you see that mullet? I had like a half-ass mullet going on. What a goofy look. That was so goofy.
I've been through that awkward stage before, like when I did the long hair. Does being Hardcore Champion jog any memories?
An embarrassing one. You know, it was like, that was Russo's idea. It wasn't my idea. I went along with it.
Shocked. I'm shocked.
So I'm just as guilty, if not more so, because I could have said no, but I didn't. And look, I'm grateful that I actually got to get in the ring and have a quote-unquote match with Terry Funk.
I mean, it's pretty incredible.
I don't know if I'd call it a match, but, you know, technically speaking, it was a match. But just to have that experience with a guy like Terry Funk, the time we spent going into the match before we ever got to the ring, the time we had after the match was over, a subsequent, you know, short road trip we had together in the back of the limo after that, at least gave me the opportunity to say that I got to know Terry Funk a little bit, and I'm grateful for that.